September 28th, 2008. A tiny island in the Pacific. A small team watches a rocket they cannot afford to lose. 3 times they've tried. 3 times it tore itself apart. And now the money is gone. This is the last rocket they can build. If it fails in the next 9 minutes, the company dies by morning. 20 years later, that same company is worth over $1 trillion. So what happened in those 9 minutes? And here's the strange part. The fortune they built barely comes from rockets at all. Today we pull SpaceX apart, where the money really comes from, what they're building, and the whole climb. Keep that 2008 night in your head. We're coming back to it. But first, the money, because it's not where you think. Ask how SpaceX makes money, and most people say rockets. And that's real. NASA and the military pay it to launch their hardware. In 2025, that brought in around $4 billion. Sounds like the whole story. It's barely a third of it, because the real engine is what the rockets leave up there. Look up. Thousands of small satellites are circling the Earth in a giant net. That's Starlink, SpaceX's own internet company in the sky. It beams internet to a little dish on a roof, a boat, a farm in the middle of nowhere, and people pay every month to keep it on. By early 2026, more than 10 million customers were paying, 155 countries. That one business made about $11 billion in a year, over 60% of everything SpaceX earns. And launching rockets? Barely profitable. So SpaceX isn't a rocket company that sells internet. It's an internet company that happens to own the best rockets on Earth. The rockets get the headlines. The dish on your roof pays the bills. But you can't build a network in space if every launch costs a fortune. So SpaceX did the impossible. For 60 years, every rocket flew once and fell into the ocean. Imagine flying a brand new plane across the Atlantic once, then dumping it in the sea. That's why space costs so much. So SpaceX asked, what if the rocket came back? They taught the booster to flip, fire its engines, and land itself standing straight up. First tries, explosions. Then, December 2015, one landed. Perfectly. Now you refuel it and fly again. Everyone else built rockets to throw away. SpaceX built one to come home. That's the trick that made Starlink possible. Now they're building something bigger, Starship, the most powerful rocket ever, fully reusable. Built for huge loads, the Moon, and eventually Mars. Because Mars was the point from day one. But to see why, we have to rewind. Back to 2001, Elon Musk had just made a fortune selling PayPal. He went to NASA's website to find the date humans would land on Mars. He found nothing, no plan. So he cooked up a stunt, send a tiny greenhouse to Mars, grow one plant in red dirt, put it on every front page. He just needed a rocket. He flew to Russia to buy old missiles. They laughed him out of the room, offered one rocket for $8 million. He said no. On the flight home, he did the math. The parts of a rocket cost almost nothing next to the price. So he'd build his own. May 2002, $100 million of his own money. SpaceX begins. The first rocket, Falcon 1, was small. March 2006, 25 seconds up, one corroded part fails. It drops. 2007, climbs, spins, gone. August 2008, the stages collide. 3 failures. the money's almost gone. And Tesla, his car company, is dying at the same time. Which brings us back to that island. September 28, 2008. The fourth rocket. The last one they can afford. It lifts off, climbs, and reaches orbit. The first privately built liquid-fueled rocket ever to do it. By a hair. Weeks later, just before Christmas, NASA calls. A contract worth about $1.5 billion. The money that saved the company. From one launch from dead to funded. After that, the bigger Falcon 9 in 2010. The first landing in 2015. Then Starlink from 2019. Every piece connects. The cheap rocket paid for the satellites. The satellites pay for everything else. 3 explosions and an empty bank account. That's where the $1 trillion started. So, can anyone catch them? Jeff Bezos has Blue Origin, slower, deep pockets. Boeing spent years just trying to fly astronauts. China's pushing hard, cheap launches, its own Starlink rivals. SpaceX is ahead. But ahead isn't safe. Starship keeps blowing up in tests. That's how they learn, but the timeline slips. The company leans hard on one man. Regulators can ground a rocket overnight. And Mars? Musk keeps promising it's close. The realistic version is much slower. Even going back to the moon has already slipped. Further off than the promises, closer than it's ever been. And that's the real lesson. SpaceX didn't win because one rocket worked on a lucky night. It won because it let its rockets fail, cheaply, over and over, until they stopped failing. Build, break, fix, repeat. That's why the boosters come home, why Starlink fills the sky, why the money flows. The night it almost died, and the $1 trillion today are the same story, just further down the road. From an empty bank account and 3 piles of wreckage, to rockets that land themselves and an internet made of satellites. If you like understanding how the future is actually built, the real machine, not the hype, you already know where you belong. Take care of yourself, and keep looking up.